So, John, I want to ask you about this. First, the breaking news of the morning, which is that Matt Gaetz, as it turns out, we will see the House Ethics Committee report on Matt Gaetz. Can you speak to that? Maybe its impact, if you will, and just how you digest it?
Look, it's interesting because we will now learn what the committee learned. And one of the reasons why Matt Gaetz is not proceeding as the nominee for Attorney General is because of what's in that report. He doesn't have the credibility. So we're now going to read about the scandal. Okay. Donald Trump may still find a place for Matt Gaetz. He likes him. He enjoys his company and he appreciates his support. But like Herschel Walker being sent to the Bahamas, or Kash Patel to head the FBI, or Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to lead the Department of Health and Human Services, these are ludicrous appointments, pure and simple.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the appointment of Walker to the Bahamas is sort of like one of those ambassadorship kind of things. The equivalence would be, some rich donor, you give them ambassadorship to.
Well, you remember who was the British Governor General of the Bahamas was King Edward VIII after he abdicated. The Duke of Windsor was sent to the Bahamas, out of the way, out of sight, out of mind.
But the others that you mentioned are truly troubling. I think the FBI is an organization that could be weaponized so easily and has been in the past. But the kind of weaponization that Kash Patel is talking about, I mean, with an enemies list and going after the political adversaries of Donald Trump, this will make the Hoover administration of the FBI look like a Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood kind of administration.
If J. Edgar Hoover were alive, he'd be rolling over in his grave.
Well, John, we talked about this. If he were alive, he wouldn't be in his grave. Okay, so stop it with that. So, yeah, the Patel thing is concerning. So it's not like again, a loyalist, but this is a loyalist you're putting in a critical position, unlike Herschel Walker.
I agree with you. Let me just tell you, I was asked to describe Donald Trump in 3 words. And I said loyalty, reward, and revenge. If you're loyal to Donald Trump, you'll be rewarded. And if you're disloyal, there's revenge. And that's Donald Trump in a nutshell.
In the reading that I've done, though, the David K. Johnston books, and you can even use the first administration of Trump as a guide, you can see that loyalty, to which you've just referred, can be initially rewarded. And then there are bigger and bigger requests on the part of the president.
Mike Pence is your best example.
There you go. Yeah. And so, Trump can fall out of love with you just as easily as he's fallen in love with you on some level. And then you end up in where you're asked to do something that, is either illegal, immoral, or unethical. And that's kind of where we are. I mean, what he's done, it seems to me, and I guess I'm asking you whether you agree, is he's populated his administration with those who really won't be bothered by the fact that something's immoral, unethical, or, just not cool.
I agree completely.
Yeah. So tell me, as we face the challenge, he's a month away from taking office, where do you see his priorities coming out in the first year of his administration? Can you see the biases already as to what he wants to do?
Of course, just use as an example Liz Cheney, who he is bitterly attacking. Now, Liz Cheney was the number 3 Republican in the House of Representatives. She was the vice chair of the January 6th committee. Donald Trump will never forgive her for that or for endorsing Kamala Harris. And now he's threatening to go after her. Can you imagine? I mean, really and truly, this is one of the most highly regarded leaders in our country. Liz Cheney won the John F. Kennedy Profiles in Courage Award. And I was proud to endorse that nomination. I have no words. Now, I spoke this morning to the Economic Roundtable, and I suggested to them that the hubris of Donald Trump may be his downfall. Look at Robert Kennedy Jr. just for a minute. Mitch McConnell is now on the fence because Bobby Kennedy Jr. said, I wouldn't do away with the polio vaccine, but he only said that after President Trump said it. But will the Republicans have the intestinal fortitude to stand up and just say no? It doesn't look like it. And that's a real tragedy.
Yeah, certainly if recent history is a guide, they won't. There is a lot of pressure. And that's just RFK Jr. We mentioned Kash Patel. Tulsi Gabbard is another. I mean, she'll run. She'll have under her, won't she, the CIA as director of national
There are
intelligence.
18 different intelligence departments that fall under her purview. I have no words to describe to you the horror that I feel. Look, every president wants loyalty. That's not an improper request. You go into a job and you're appointed to the job and you're confirmed. And everyone wants a reward. If you've worked for a candidate for president or any office, you may feel you're entitled to something. And I don't know if you are, but that's the way politics works. What bothers me is the revenge. And Donald Trump has made clear he's going after these people. And more disturbing, Kash Patel, if he is confirmed as director of the FBI, has said he'll go after these people. That's horrific. Do you know there is an enemies list? When Richard Nixon had an enemies list and it became public, people in this country left and right went crazy. There doesn't seem to be any concern today about an enemies list or the kinds of statements that are being made. That's what bothers me more than anything else. So, I mean, that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's interesting, the enemies list, the lack of experience. I mean, Kash Patel hasn't been an FBI agent. He's not really known in that building. I mean, this is sort of typical. I mean, another example is Pete Hegseth. I mean, he's not known at the Pentagon. He's not run anything. I'm leaving.
But he was on Fox.
Right, exactly. He was the weekend anchor at Fox, and he's handsome. I mean, I think that there is a part of Trump that just is attracted to people who come across well cosmetically, on television.
Or who have money. Can you imagine the amount of money that is being contributed now to the inaugural activities by people who were once his opponents? Why do you think they're giving? Out of the goodness of their hearts? No, they're giving for influence. This is the most corrupt beginning to a presidency I've ever seen.
So John's just referred to something that really is worth noting, and that is that this inaugural committee that's formed and then the inaugural funds that are collected, they sort of stand apart from everything else in government as a way to money your way into a position of influence. And so, as John has just noted, there are libs, there are Democrats, there are the Jeff Bezoses of the world. There are, I mean, I don't know whether he's a Democrat or Republican, but I know that he's the leader of a major corporation, and he and others are contributing millions of dollars to this inaugural fund. And the idea is, as you suggested, John, it's just to curry favor. I mean, at some point.
Let me point out to you, the Washington Post was prepared to endorse Kamala Harris. Who pulled the endorsement? Jeff Bezos. I mean, I don't know how to define corruption any other way than to look at what Donald Trump is doing right now.
So the other thing I'll just say and add another specific to this is the latest pick at the Pentagon. Again, another person without experience in the building. But he is, as just noted by Brother Rothmann, he is, and Rothmann was saying, either a loyalist or, the other thing that Rothmann just said is, or somebody who's a big donor. And that's what you have in Andrew McKenna, who's a leading contender for Secretary of the Air Force. McKenna is a private pilot. He heads a small Washington advisory and investment firm. He'd be the latest of Trump's picks to take on a top job at the Pentagon without significant experience in the Pentagon. He served in the White House liaison's office at the Agricultural Department during the Bush administration. Then he went into the private sector. So you've got Pete Hegseth and you've got this Andrew McKenna, neither of whom is connected to the organization they would be running. And Kash Patel falls into the same category, as does Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah, but you have to understand, this is a soon-to-be president who has talked about bringing back the former chief of staff, General Millie, recalling him to service so he can be court-martialed. I spoke this morning to a group about the question of revenge. That is what I'm worried about. And I can only tell you it scares the living bejeebers out of me. Whatever you think of George Milley, he was a solid chief of staff.
Mark Millie,
So,
you mean?
Mark
Yeah.
Milley. And so it's just astounding to me.
By the way, I don't think much of Mark Millie. Okay.
Well, whether we think a lot of him or not,
right.
he retired. And remember,
Sure.
he stood for the Constitution. He opposed Donald Trump. You don't want to know what Trump wants him to be court-martialed for? Because he sent a message to the Chinese after the insurrection of January 6th to say the American government is secure and stable and there's not going to be a problem. Because,
by the way, I'm confusing my Mark Millie. I don't feel bad about, but who you said he was his chief of staff? Are you sure about that?
Mark Milley was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Yeah, he's a solid guy. Absolutely.
I'm sorry if I wasn't clear.
No. But the White House chief of staff under
Which
Trump.
one? There were 4 of them.
I know. He went on to be a CBS analyst. I've forgotten his. I thought he was also a Mike. It's not important. I don't know why I even get off on this stuff. His new chief of staff is really talented. I mean, she's talented bad. I mean, Susie Wiles has been, she's been a very effective lobbyist, right, John Rothman? She's going to be,
yes,
she's competent.
But let me explain to you. She has been Donald Trump's chief of staff through the campaign. She survived. She was stable. And that's what Donald Trump is looking for.
You were talking to this economic forum. Give me a thought about the economy under Trump. He's inheriting a good economy. Even Gary Cohn, who ran the video a couple of days ago, who really ran the economy for Trump under his first administration, says the economy's in pretty good shape.
It is. We are a booming economy. We are the economic engine of the world, which is what I said this morning. The point of the American economy is clear. And frankly, when history is written, Joe Biden's going to get high marks on the economy, no matter what the Republicans say. And now there's a question with the tariffs, because Donald Trump is insisting he's going to impose tariffs. And if you heard from Canada, they're saying you impose tariffs on us, we're going to hit right back at you. And remember that the gas and oil, which comes to the Pacific northwest of this country, the Atlantic states, all come from Canada. And
that's right. What John is saying, sorry to interrupt, I was just going to put a specific on that. When you talk to people in Wisconsin, Minnesota, these northern border states,
New York.
Get their,
And if Donald Trump follows through with his threat, the Canadians are going to retaliate, and it will have a huge effect on the American economy. And that is what the Canadian minister talked about today. So, I mean, this is something, Mark, that we're going to have a lot to talk about in the days ahead. And I regret to say a lot of it may not be good. Although, let me be blunt, I'm hoping that Donald Trump's hubris is put aside and that the views that we have now are mistaken, because we don't want to have a president who fails or a president who creates strife. And that's the real issue. Not to mention,
I don't know what a successful Trump presidency would be. I mean, I guess I want him to stay out of trouble, but his agenda is pretty dangerous. I don't know.
I agree with you, but you have to hope. And I know it's a crazy thing for me to say. I'm certainly a harsh critic of Donald Trump's. But if he fails, or if this enemies list grows, or if he goes after Liz Cheney, or if Kash Patel uses the FBI to go after enemies, this country will go through a change that is profoundly disturbing. Yeah. And I do want you to know, Trump has inherited a strong economy from Joe Biden, and Joe Biden deserves great credit for what he has done. But these are real issues and things that I know that on the Mark Thompson program we're going to be discussing in the weeks and months and 4 years ahead.
You know something, we will, and Mike Flynn, somebody pointed out, might have been the person I was thinking of. It wasn't who I was thinking of, but it bears a mention, because Mike Flynn is truly a problematic figure in American history, isn't it?
General Michael Flynn.
Yeah, General Michael Flynn.
Who was the first national security advisor and who had to resign or had to be forced out before he really took office because he lied about Russia.
He it was thought was in league with Russia, actually.
Yes,
I mean,
and that's what people don't get. Whenever I hear Donald Trump say Russia, 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 doesn't he remember General Flynn? Doesn't he remember his key aides who suffered because of that? I mean, I have to tell you, Mark, I'm not sympathetic at all to Donald Trump on a whole host of issues, but I'm hoping, it's what I said to my kids. They said, well, what's going to happen? I said, you have to hope that the structure of American democracy survives the assault. And a woman today at the talk that I gave this morning said, but he said he wants to be dictator on day one. Well, our Constitution doesn't allow that. And I hope the structure and the strictures of the Constitution prevail.
well, you, of course, have much greater faith in those strictures and structures than do I, but I also share your hope. I just wanted to mention Mike Flynn in the context of Trump and the fact that Trump has said he's going to bring him back, literally said, we're going to bring you back. He just made these comments over the weekend. And again, if it were up to me, I would remove Flynn from any kind of pension eligibility. He is and he got a pardon, didn't he, John? That's the only reason that Michael Flynn is not serving time, I think.
That's correct. Well, I don't know if he would have been convicted, but the point is, what Flynn did was so unconscionable. And this is a man who was, well, you may recall Barack Obama said to Donald Trump, don't touch him with a 10-foot pole.
That's right. That's right. Obama warned Trump. He said he's in league with Russia and he's a security threat. Trump said this, though, over the weekend. He said, we're proud of you, General, talking about Flynn. I knew it from day one. You're really somebody very special. He's also, just as a note, he's a Christo-fascist, okay? So he wants this to be a Christian nation. He's essentially a white nationalist. So this guy is a really problematic figure. So maybe we dodged a bullet in the fact that he's not running the Pentagon, you know. But I don't know that Pete Hegseth himself isn't a Christo-fascist. So go ahead.
It's the same thing with Matt Gaetz. These Trump loyalists are going to be rewarded. They may not be rewarded with cabinet positions, but they're going to be given critical roles. And everybody who loves America, whether you're a liberal or a conservative, a Democrat or a Republican, ought to be deeply concerned about this. And by the way, not many people are talking about it, Mark. I commend you that you are actually raising these issues, as I try to do in my podcast and everywhere I go.
Kim, you had something for John?
Does it make sense, just from a logical standpoint, that Trump would have a scandal like he did with Michael Flynn and then nominate someone like Tulsi Gabbard? It's like inconceivable that he could learn from the past.
No, you don't understand. Donald Trump does not admit error. We're wrong. He's right. And as long as he believes that, and he has the power to affirm that, he's going to. Somebody asked me this morning, what's your worst nightmare? And I said, my worst nightmare is that Donald Trump doesn't learn the lessons and that we will therefore suffer the consequences. He's going to be president for 4 years. Now, he controls the Senate. He only has the House by 2 votes now, and that could change. I point out to people in 1931, the Republicans lost control of the House because of the death or resignation of members of the House. The Supreme Court is now firmly in his hands, as is the district courts, the appellate courts, because he's going to make the nominations. And this is something that should concern us all because it goes to the heart of American democracy.
Give me, on the way out here, John, a couple of words about Democratic
Are you leaving? Holy shit.
Somebody, Albert, will you tell John he's the one who's leaving? I don't want to have to tell him.
Albert, thank you.
The Democratic leadership, give me a word about that. You know, the AOC tried to ascend into a position of Democratic leadership last week, and there is a question as to the future of the party. Can you speak to that?
It's a long discussion because the Democratic Party has to reform. The first thing I would do if I were in charge is I would want somebody like Ray Bliss, who was a Republican tactician and chairman of the National Committee, to be the chair of the Democratic Party. They need to have someone who understands not the politics, but the structure of how you win an election. That's what Ray Bliss gave the Republicans between 1965 and 1968. Number 2, Now is the time for the potential candidates, to be revealed. Let's examine them. Let's know who they are. And most important of all, the Democratic leadership in the House and Senate have to really articulate their goals clearly and precisely. And they must not be afraid to stand in opposition, the loyal opposition. Their opposition is not to the American system, but to what Donald Trump is trying to do to it. And they need to make that clear to the American people as well.
But when you look at the Democratic Party, John, and you take in those priorities to which you've just referred, do you see the next generation of leadership, or do you see it's time to graduate out some who you feel may not have fought or stood vigorously enough against some of what you're talking about?
No political party is static. There will be new people that we've never heard of who will come into the Democratic Party. I would remind you, nobody really knew who Barack Obama was until he gave the keynote at the Democratic Convention in 2004. So you never know who's going to emerge. William Jennings Bryan delivered a speech, the Cross of Gold speech, and revolutionized the Democratic Party, taking it from a conservative party to basically a liberal party. So my sense is, I can't predict the future, but I can tell you that the Democrats need to have real political structure. They need to have a chairman of their national committee who understands politics. That has to be coordinated with the state parties. They have to find the right candidates. They have to go out and recruit candidates that will run under the Democratic banner who represent hope for the future. And so I have every confidence. This is a two-party system, whether you like it or not. And a third party in this country hasn't a chance of a snowball in hell. And we could go over the whole history of third parties. You and I talked about that when they were talking about a no-labels party.
As it turns out, though, and probably in this election, there was on some level a relevance anyway to the third party. The third party spoiler, which is really the only role that third parties have.
It made no difference in this campaign. It made a difference in 2000. Yeah. It may have made a difference. I think Jill Stein made a difference in 2016, but they can't win. So if you want to see a loyal opposition, which is what the Democratic Party ought to brand itself as being, that's the way you proceed. And I have great faith in the future of both parties. You know, I really believe that if Donald Trump had been defeated, the Republicans would be going through the anguish of rebuilding their party. That's what happens when you lose.
Right.
And it's not a bad thing because it creates an evolution of power.
Barbara says, time for Nancy Pelosi to step down. She encouraged Joe to retire.
Well, Nancy's time is limited. She's no longer Speaker of the House. She'll sit there this term, and then there'll be a battle in San Francisco, probably between her daughter Christine and Scott Wiener, who's a member of the state Senate, for that congressional seat. The Republicans having a chance for a snowball in hell. The last Republican to hold that seat was Bill Maillard, and he left it in 1974 in order to become our ambassador to NATO. And he was replaced, as you know, by Phil Burton. So, by John Burton. By John Burton.
The new guard, you're saying, will just inevitably replace the old guard, and that is happening on some level.
But they're in their 80s.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, and sadly, we've seen money spoil politics to the point that it's just it's disgusting. I mean, you just see now unabashedly money funneling into these political campaigns and to the pocketbooks of so many of these politicians. And the Trump administration will be, I think it will be wildly corrupt to the point that some of the stuff we'll find out about it.
It's facilitating it. That's the simple reality. Money, Jess Unruh, the former leader of the California State Assembly, once said, is the mother's milk of politics. And it's true. Daniel Lurie would not be the mayor-elect of San Francisco, but for the fact that he put millions of his own money into the campaign. But then let me point out to you, John F. Kennedy would never have won the Democratic nomination in 1960 had not his father pumped millions into that campaign. So it depends on where you sit, whether it's a positive or a negative. But money is a corrupting influence.
The very last thing I want to ask you is about the Middle East. Syria has fallen. Tell me what the government of Syria now will be comprised of, how that changes I mean, I understand this is very complex and a much longer conversation, how that changes the relationship of the U.S. to Syria. Certainly, Russia ends up as a loser in this, right? They were a client state of the Russians, the Syrians. Can you just speak to the fall of Syria and what the future might be also
Yeah,
in
it's a
relation to
huge
the U.S.?
impact on the Middle East. Remember, Russia is now withdrawing its base from Syria. Russia has no warm water ports except Vladivostok, which I would remind you is open only 4 months out of every year, hardly a warm water port. For the Russians, this was a terrible blow. It's a terrible blow to the Iranians because they also had a vested interest in support from Russia. And we now have a situation that's completely fluid. Nobody knows what's going to happen in Syria, whether it'll be a radical Islamic revolution, whether it will be a mainstream revolution. The one thing we know is there is no democracy in the Middle East except for Israel. Whatever you think of Israel's policies, they're a democracy. They hold elections. I doubt you'll see that in Syria.
You can find him across the podcast universe. Around the Political World with John Rothmann is the name of the podcast. It's a daily offering. You can find him here on Wednesdays, and this Saturday you'll join us in the holiday meetup. By the way,
I wouldn't miss it. I'm just waiting for the link. What time does it start? Tell us again.
5 p.m.
Oh, well, I'm going to
For
be
you,
there.
it's 5 p.m. It's 8 o'clock in the East, but you'll be in the West, 5 o'clock. Yeah.
And may I just ask, is it sold out yet?
I think there's one more spot because there was somebody who wanted to come, then you couldn't get it organized, but so there may be one more
Those
chair.
of you who want to participate,
They do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
And you can see it says sign up at our PayPal with
Yeah.
$50 donation to lock on a spot.
Yeah.
And meet up
And
with
just
your
put-
donation. This is
Yeah,
great.
put meet up when you throw a donation, and then send me a note at mtsmeetup@gmail.com. I'll tell you what, because Rothmann has opened it back up, I will take anybody who wants to join on Saturday. I will keep it open through the end of the afternoon. So if you want to join, I will extend it one more day. So
May I
there it is.
just put in the plug, Mark? What you're doing with Kim and with Albert is such a good deed for all of us. And the Mark Thompson program deserves to be supported. I want you to know he doesn't pay me. I come on because I believe in what Mark is trying to do. And I want to urge you all to support him and sign up. And thank you, Mark, for opening it up just a few more people. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Now we're excited to spend some time with you off the air. So a chance to hear John in kind of a kickback way. Just kind
And
of
you have a
chill
lot of
with
other
us.
people joining in too, right?
Oh, no, we do. Spencer Christian will be there. Nikki Maduro is going to come through. I appreciate what Pelosi has done for our city and country, says Spencer, but nobody I know wants her daughter in that seat, myself included. Time for someone new. Yeah.
Well, we'll see, but we'll have a lot to talk about. And is the program on Saturday is 1 hour?
It's 2 hours, but you can just come in for 10 minutes. You don't have to come in for the whole thing. Just
Do
come
you
in for an
think
hour if
I
you
want to miss the excitement of a holiday party with Mark Thompson?
Well, you know who's
Are
going to
you
be there, who
kidding?
you talked politics with last time, is Josh Mankiewicz, whose dad, as you know, ran the campaign for McGovern and was a press secretary for RFK. RFK Jr.'s dad.
That's correct.
And Brian finally leaves you with this, John. A Hanukkah blessing to John and Mark and everyone on the show that enriches our week. A true blessing. This is the first Hanukkah candle on Christmas Day. I call it Chanamus. With love, Brian. That's great.
Brian, thank you very much.
Hanukkah
Brian's a
is
great
on
guy.
Christmas Day this year, right? It's at the same time as Christmas.
night. Christmas
Christmas
night,
night.
first night of Hanukkah.
Albert, do you have the thing I sent you of Smokey Robinson? Can you grab that real quick? I sent it to you yesterday. This is the magic of this show. If you haven't seen it, we'll get it for you in the next few minutes in case Albert can't organize it quickly. But my favorite thing every Hanukkah is Smokey Robinson wishing us a happy Hanukkah. Go ahead, Albert. Run a little of Smokey, please.
Happy Chanukah. I have no idea what Chanukah is, but happy Chanukah because they said so.
Give it to me from the beginning,
Anyway,
please,
God
Albert,
bless
so we
you,
can
Brian.
hear him, please.
And
Thank you.
happy Chanukah. I have no idea what Chanukah is, but happy Chanukah because they said so. Anyway, God bless you, babe, and enjoy Chanukah. Have a wonderful time.
So
Happy
that was
Chanukah.
his cameo, okay? So somebody said they wanted to, get a Hanukkah greeting from Smokey Robinson. So you go to Cameo and you pay a certain amount, and then they just write it out, Hanukkah, but he pronounced it Chinooka, and it's still my favorite. I just love it. All right, happy Chinooka. We'll see you, John. It's Saturday.
Thank you.
John Rothmann, everybody.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.